Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Hans Nichols.
Why don't we all sit down? Does everyone? Thank you very much. We are back with our next panel to discuss a variety of topics, namely education ecosystems across the entire region. Let me just do a quick introduction so we have everyone's name and everyone's vaguely on the same page. Directly to my left, we have Miriam Ben Salah Chakoum. She is of the Confederation of General Enterprise in Morocco, the first female, I believe, to hold this position within the region. Thank you for joining us. Then we have Khalid Abdullah Jabani, still the ESCON bank. Where are you now in terms of the bank?
Well, I'm Chief Executive Officer of something called the DMI, which is based in Geneva. See a lot of people looking at that, yes, which is Dar al-Mal Islami, which basically we look after financial institutions across the globe.
Next we have Dr. Koller. She, of course, whenever I talk to an engineer or computer scientist, I'm always intimidated. It's no different now. But she started Coursera, an online educational tool. And then we have Mr. Tariq Youssef. He's the CEO of Silatech, which of course in Arabic means your connections, sending capital, creating jobs. That is the challenge. And then last but not least, we have Fataya Siljilamasi. I'm going to start my first question with you because you are in charge of regional, what's happening regionally. And if we could just get your overview of what you see the challenges and the opportunities of all the countries that touch the Mediterranean.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you indeed for the invitation to participate in this panel with such prestigious colleagues. Talking about entrepreneurship within the framework of the region, covering mainly the MENA region, I think we have to look at it from both the challenges and the opportunity side. On the main challenge that I would like to highlight, because I believe that it's important to keep in mind, is the importance, as we have been talking this morning about entrepreneurship, is the size of the market. The importance of having a critical size, which inevitably comes with broader and more in-depth regional integration, which is still lagging a little bit behind in our part of the world. Let me just remind that intra-regional trade in North Africa and the Middle East is less than 5%, whereas in other areas it's more than 20, 30%. And I would like here to commend the initiative taken by Madame Miriam Salah as President of the CGM of launching the IMCI initiative Maghrébine pour le commerce et l'industrie et l'investissement, because this is what is needed for entrepreneurs to have a broader market. The second point I would like to make is the importance of taking into consideration realities from the angle of opportunities with regards to success stories on the ground. A lot of discussion on challenges, but there are also a lot of opportunities, and success stories are there. And I would like to highlight, and I have already met a lot of people in the audience, and I'm sure that they will be taking the floor during the sessions. There are a lot of initiatives that are on the ground that need to be supported in order to scale up the figures and scale up the success stories so that their impact, the socioeconomic impact becomes greater.
And do you mean by that government support, or do you mean private sector support? When you talk about more support?
Both. Public support and private support. My main point here is one has to look at it from a bottom-up approach. There are a lot of things that are happening. I have in the room, I know that there are a lot of NGOs, a lot of groups, a lot of individuals who are doing an incredible job actually getting startups, SMEs, support, coaching, mentoring, and these needs to be supported by the governments, as they already do, but increased support, and also from the private sector. So I believe that scaling up in order for the figures to become more significant is exactly what is needed so that the impact of the success stories become more visible and therefore have more significant echo. And by the way, not only with regards to intra-regional within the MENA region, but looking also at where opportunities are. And here I'm referring to both the northern perspective with the European Union or with the US, or the southern perspective with Sub-Saharan Africa as well.
you know, when you host a panel like this, every once in a while, you can tell someone is dying to say something. And I think this gentleman to my left is dying to jump into the conversation. You're like a racehorse, just ready to get out. So give us your views.
Well, actually, I'd like to take on what Vice President was talking about this morning. I was coming back from Chicago to Dubai on the plane on Emirates, and I was watching a movie basically by CNN, which is called Ivory Tower, which is about the education, university education, the pros and cons in terms of how expensive it's getting, is it worthwhile doing it or not. But what came out of it, which was an important factor, was that the United States, it is what it is, and Biden actually mentioned that, and I'm glad that at the age of 42 has become very mature, so he brought it out very nicely in his speech, that in the United States, the reason innovation works, the reason we have entrepreneurs, because the environment works very well, is because of critical thinking. You can have education as much as you want. You can have the best universities, the best curriculums that you do. However, if you don't allow that critical thinking to come out, and the critical thinking is, as you said, taking risk, number one. Number two, asking all questions. There is no boundaries for questions. We live in a part of the world where we are very good on going from the 7th floor and we want to go to the penthouse, but we don't want to scratch the bottom and really pick up and come up there. Because a lot of the people, and we talk about incubators, innovative incubators. What I would suggest, actually, we should have an innovative incubators for government officials in the Arab and African world, because that is very, very important. They need to be innovative in their mindset to accept the other side. Just to give you an example.
So government officials need to go back to school.
I think government officials, they have to go back to the basics. I mean, you can spend so much money has been spent in the past 15 years, especially, on education across the Arab world. We hear about Cisco coming in, we hear about everybody else coming and helping on the education side of things, but that doesn't do much when you don't allow the mind to go forward. Just to give you an example, I come from a small country, which is Bahrain. We are all together as Bahrainis, not more than 500,000 people. There is a record-producing team called Majid and Jordan. I'm sure some of the younger ones here, they know them. They co-produced a very, very basically successful song, which was by Drake, and that is All Dawn, We Are Going Home, which has been very successful in the United States, Europe, and everywhere else. Now, this Majid, who is half of the team, is a Bahraini. His name is Majid Al-Maskati. No one has championed that person in a small country like Bahrain to really say, look, this is a guy who he did something. Let's champion it. Let's get other people basically thinking and doing something about it, going forward, taking risks. We do not do that. We are very good in championing because this is the man who basically has status, so we champion him regardless whether he brings something to the table or not. But we do not really champion the guys who want to do. So we're doing a lot of things to keep, I would say, lip service rather than really doing things. Part of that, there are successes because there is lip service, but the majority of it is lip service. So if we do not go back to the drawing board and we correct things from bottom up, I don't think all what we're discussing is going to do anything for us. We have success maybe 1 out of 10 by luck, rather than the environment being correct. So we don't have the right environment in this part of the world.
Well, that's quite a remark. You promised to make this lively. You have indeed. I'd like to ask the lady to my left, do you agree with that?
Well, I agree partly, if Khalid allows me, because community building is also public sector, and universities and private sector. What you're saying, scaling up from bottom to up, is also in terms of the size of the corporation, starting from the stand-up to you need the whole value chain, and the whole value chain starts with the idea, and the idea has to be implemented through a curricula, through academy, and so stand up, and then start up, and then scale up. But when you arrive to a scale-up position, it's already how you say, almost a mature company, a mature entrepreneur that is scaling up. But what we need in the region, and definitely, is to unleash the ideation stage within the entrepreneurs, and that facilitates the connection between big enterprises and small enterprises, and the integration with the region, which means that what Mr. Sijan Messi was saying is the lack. I think one of the teams, not I think, I'm sure, is the inclusive growth. And by inclusive growth, we always think young and women. We forget about the region, either within the country or the enlarged region, such as Mediterranean, MENA, or Africa. And we have that possibility today, and I think it's just a window. Otherwise, some other regions had a better integration, which means a better inclusive growth.
Well, let me throw that to Mr. Youssef. Of course, you were in the incubator space. You're helping people scale up. Is the challenge really getting from floor 1 to 7, or is the challenge getting from floor 7 to 70?
Probably 7 to 7 in so many ways. Let me maybe paraphrase the question you asked me. I think in this region we're still searching for the sort of practical examples, interventions, the various things that my colleagues have spoken about, that we can feel, one, confident in, and two, we can begin to think about how to scale them up. Rather than think of incubators and accelerators as people have usually done in terms of the technology industry or the telecommunication, I think we need to broaden these concepts, as the previous speaker had spoken, to include a societal focus, a focus on entrepreneurship that serves social goals, an entrepreneurship that lifts up everyone, an entrepreneurship, as the Prime Minister alluded earlier, that speaks to notions of equity, inclusiveness. And here, I think we're still experimenting. We can do a lot to experiment regionally, locally, learn how to get this perfected to suit our local circumstances. And my hope, very, very succinctly, lies in connecting entrepreneurs to one another. I have now come around to the view that says, in our region at least, expect very little from government, do not count too much on the private sector, but support and encourage entrepreneurs, civil society, the NGOs, and all the actors in the non-governmental, non-formal space to begin to create the communities that will scale things up.
And here I thought you were going to say you flew over on Air Qatar and we're going to take a shot at the Emirates promotion that we clearly had. Let me ask Dr. Koller. We're talking about how to kind of get the seed capital, that first little bit of group, and then have a spark. Tell me about how you see it changing the next 5 years and the next 15 years. Will there be more change in the next 5 and then more change in the next 15?
Well, I think the rate of change is only accelerating. We have seen dramatic change already starting to emerge in the last 2 years. I think the next 5 will be pivotal, but then the rate of change, as it is globally, will only continue to accelerate as you have more and more young people who finally do get access to education, access to opportunity, and have the tools that they deserve in order to change their local ecosystem. Innovation feeds on innovation. As you create hubs, as exist in Silicon Valley, as exist in New York, as exist in London and Dublin and others, I think we're going to see more and more of these hubs here in the MENA region as well.
We're talking about cultural differences a little bit. Does a factory, a tech hub in Berlin, have that much in common with a tech hub in Beirut? I see you shaking your head. Does it need to be more organic, or is it easily transferable, sort of the Silicon Valley model or the London model, or does it need to be organic?
I don't think we can replicate or transplant the Silicon Valley model wholly to this region. But I think, as Daphne was trying to suggest, we can think of the principles.
That's right.
Within these structures that can be replicated and brought to this region. I think we have some early experience to suggest for us that a lot of these principles can be adopted locally. They cannot look the same, They still require engagement with governments, with laws, with the private sector in ways that will create slightly different models. But going back maybe to what Mr. Sujil Masia suggested earlier, this is the right time for us to push precisely those sorts of experiments to see what actually would work and to try then to replicate them around the region with its specific cultures, norms, but more importantly, laws, regulations, and even stereotypes about what entrepreneurship does.
Let me pose that question to you. Is the bigger challenge having laws, clear rules of the road on the books, or is it actually getting investment? What do you see the need for?
I think investment is not a problem, because when you invest, unless there is the prerequisites, and as my colleague said, some of the prerequisites, and also to have a specific addressed type of entrepreneurs, such as innovative through particular hubs, or more traditional type of economy with industry and some other businesses. No, I think the opportunity today is that we're growing global and exchange of information, benchmarking the best model, but the base is the same, and particular, and there is some specifics to some economies, such as the Moroccan economy. We have been, improving in terms of incubators with some universities, but the scale is not here yet. So this is how we say, a trend that we want to impact and to put in place.
But do you all agree with the statement, which I think I'm hearing, that more money isn't needed? What's needed is better infrastructure.
I would like to recall one figure that we need to keep in mind. From Morocco to Egypt, and it's probably true beyond, you have 2 million newcomers to the labor market every year. And it adds from one year to another. Okay? So it's very important to take into account also the time dimension of what we are trying to achieve. This is why it is very important to, I think, get away from the top-down versus bottom-up approach and to say we actually need both at the same time, urgently. The top-down is getting the right environment to unleash business opportunities. And that goes, it's a 180-degree vision that goes from education to a lot of things until laws and regulations and so forth. And it goes hand in hand with also maximizing on the existing potential, just as it was said, I think, by everybody here, because when you look in the room, these potential exist. And people are ready to actually double and triple the figure. But for that, they would need appropriate support, be it by governments, regional organizations such as the UFM, but also from private sector. And there are many, many experiences that I'm hoping that during these 2 days sessions that we will hear from them. Because frankly, I'm on the ground as much as possible to be in contact with the people who are really working. And frankly, you have to recognize that a lot of very interesting initiatives are taking place, and they need to be further supported in order to make the connection between the bottom-up and the top-down approach with the sole purpose of having the figures right and the impact amplified.
Mr. Johnny either wants to vigorously agree or vigorously disagree.
Your question about is it the money or is it changing things? Look, Biden actually this morning said it, and it's reality, that majority of, I'm just taking the Gulf for argument's sake, the 6 countries in the Gulf, majority of the economy is in the hands of the government, or the hands of the people who basically overlook the government. Let's be more frank on that. So it's in their hand. I think as long as the governments have the majority of the economy, regardless how much money comes in, true entrepreneurship mindset is not going to be there. We've got to have a cultural shock in the mindset across the board, from top down. I know it's not easy for some of us to talk about it. I mean, that in itself shows that there isn't this business of taking risk, there's business of basically critical thinking. A lot of smart people sitting here, a lot of smart people sitting there, but they will not really come out and say this basic thing, that the more you give to the government, the less you're going to have entrepreneurship, the less you're going to have reforms. And actually taking the Gulf and just looking over the past 30 years, whenever the oil prices went down, you saw reforms started coming in, because the government cannot buy stability. You've got to have sustainability. Sustainability, you need to, in order to have long-term stability, you need to create those reforms. You need to create that environment where people can have that so-called equal opportunity mindset starting going in. That's where entrepreneurship, real entrepreneurship mindset comes in. So it's not the money, okay? It's much more the other side, but in this part of the world, it's a much bigger issue. I mean, we are one of the worst in the world in terms of unemployment. We have 11%. Which is one of the highest in the world. And across actually the young people, as Mr. Biden said, majority of our people are below the age of 25. They see what's happening around them. I mean, this issue, the world, the past 20 years, so much has advanced technologically, and what it's done for all of us. And what's going to happen in the next 10 years is exponential, so it's going to go much higher. And you're going to have more of the people having problems with that. So what we've had in let's call it, I mean, I've heard today in 3 of the speeches, the word terrorism is always used as an excuse to get out of things. I think as long as we carry on not giving equal opportunities, as long as we carry on not really evolving, truly evolving, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have we have Qaeda, we have Daesh now, maybe in 10 years down the road, we have something else, X, Y, and Z. I think it's very important that you bring the people in. We're going to make mistakes. The top is going to make mistakes by giving in to people. The people, they're going to make mistakes. The private sector to come in and help, they make mistakes. You talk about rules, yes, I mean, there's the usual thing, legal redress, corruption, all that is there. But I think that is truly not, it's a red herring in the discussion in terms of really going forward. If you don't fix things at the base, forget about all these niceties that we talk about doing something. It's going to do a little bit, but it's not going to do the real shift going forward. And we are young. We've got young population where if we don't give these guys truly equal opportunity, as he said, it's not for him, it's not for his son. Actually, he's looking for 50, 100, 200 years down the road. Dynasties don't last. Whether it's a family, whether it is a system, it does not last if it does not evolve itself all the time. And I think what we're not doing, and we should look at the mirror, that we should evolve in order that we create that element of what I would call the true entrepreneurship, which is basically coming back to the ivory tower, based on critical thinking, of allowing the mind to think outside the box.
And not just memorization.
Precisely.
You clearly wanted to jump in there.
Yeah. Very quickly, innovation and technology, and we were talking about the why Gen, and why Gen needs also, in terms of financing, new type of financing, new alternative financial instruments, which are needed in our economies, and they do exist in some other economies, to support the hubs, to support the startup. So yes, finance, we don't need any particular more amount of financing or incentives for that, but new mechanism, new approach, because it's evolving, the needs are different, and it should be addressed differently.
So your suggestion, your solution is 1,000 roses, let a lot of different opportunities bloom.
Yeah, yes, we do have a lot of opportunities, and I think my colleague can only agree on that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here if there was no opportunities to talk about and to address, especially.
Well, Dr. Koller, you're obviously involved with young people, bringing them up to speed, helping them scale. How do you see it?
So I think one of the big factors in the success of first Silicon Valley and then some of the other hubs that we've mentioned is giving people access not just to capital, because that exists in many other places, but to talent. So I think it's absolutely critical to provide educational opportunities that do bring people up to speed, to the point that not only they themselves have the ability to create and run a business, but also that there is human capital around them that they can leverage in order to build up their business and make it successful and scalable. We've talked a lot about scalability and the importance to take ideas and really make them big and impactful. But I think coming back to the question of top-down versus bottom-up, there's been a lot of government attempts to create educational opportunities from the top down. This has traditionally been viewed as the role of government. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now in education is actually a democratization and a much more bottoms-up approach to the creation of educational opportunities, with people being empowered to just go and find, generally online or sometimes via small incubators, the opportunities to learn the skills that they feel are the most important for them in building or running their business, and also to then use those opportunities to train employees that can help them build their business further. And I think that's a big factor of what I see is going to change in the next 5 years.
Well, let me ask Mr. Yusuf, is there enough mentoring going on, or does there need to be more mentoring? Is part of the problem is that successful entrepreneurs aren't talking to the younger entrepreneurs?
Both. I don't think we have a big enough community of successful entrepreneurs who have the time and are willing to engage with inexperienced or startup entrepreneurs. That's precisely what we meant earlier by how can we create the platforms, the incubators, the accelerators, where these guys can come together. Incidentally, recently there was an attempt to create a common workspace for entrepreneurs in the region that went viral on the internet. People actually like the idea of coming together, creating a sort of a LinkedIn for entrepreneurs in this region, so that mentoring, teaching, experience sharing, all of these things matter. This actually also matters, it turns out, for something you just asked about a few minutes ago, which is the financing. There is a lot of financing in the region, but it's locked up. Unlocking that financing requires more often, in the experience at least we've seen, as was suggested earlier, that you combine the money with the financial literacy, with the training, with actually the skills and the services that entrepreneurs need. If you could do these two together and do them enough, you could then unlock a lot of the financing and then get the entrepreneurs to support one another.
So the money is there. The infrastructure and the local know-how is lacking? Or what's the lacking part? The understanding of how to take the financing and implement it and deploy it properly?
I would say what's lacking is connecting the dots, because the money is there. I don't know of any financial institution, be it international or bilateral, that does not have a financial scheme for support to SMEs in the region. The World Bank, EC, EIB, EBRD, I mean, you name them, there's not one single institution, financial institution, that does not have a scheme to promote SMEs. But at the same time, how do you connect these availabilities also with some innovative funding? And I totally agree with Madam Saleh about that, because there are new innovative financing. And how do you connect that with, of course, development of private sector and SMEs and investment is a horizontal value, but it has some national and regional specificities. If only sector-specific realities. So how do you connect that with that specific reality, not only for a sector, within a country, and sometimes within the country, within a region, okay? And that is the link to how do you connect the government's efforts, the NGO efforts, and everybody's efforts in order to actually make it come true. And this is where the performance indicators are so important. It's not only announcements that are important, but actually having performance indicators to measure and then to fine-tune all the initiatives that are triggered on the ground.
I think it is called culture of results, and I think sometimes we're lacking that in our region. And but I would like to say about one word about. I had a business community. I've been elected, but anyway, the thing is, in our DNA, is to mentor, facilitate, be proactive, and we create the Entrepreneurship Academy, where we gather and we address not only we analyze the problems within financing, training, skills, and try to address the government, the executive, with the proper solution, because we interact with young entrepreneurs, with the academia, universities, and mentoring is something that is definitely needed. It's there. It's a low-hanging fruit because we have a lot of success stories within the region, in any sector. We do have in our region, from MENA to the rest of Africa, a lot of success stories, but they are not highlighted. And I think the main focus, if you allow me, is information, sharing their information. We don't have that mindset of sharing information, sharing experience, and this is the exercise we're doing today.
Well, let me ask Mr. Jahani, does every country need a tech hub, or can you have, is that the wrong way to look at it? Can you have regional tech hubs? Should every country have a designated tech hub with spokes connected to the world?
Okay, the answer is the latter. Okay. I just want to come to something which I think if you Americans are very good in this. If you do a study for the past 50 years between the United States and I would say the Middle East and Africa, in terms of the successful entrepreneurs, and just looking at those successful entrepreneurs between the two, United States and this part of the world, I think you'll find, and I'm rest assured in my mindset, and very clear, that you'll find that majority of the ones, as Biden said this morning, of the entrepreneurs in the United States are rebels. People who actually went against things and they got things doing. Majority of the people who are entrepreneurs in this part of the world, I'm not saying all, but majority, they'll be sitting on the lap of the government or being basically co-joining it with the government. So I think that, again, I know I'm repeating it in a different way because we are, in this part of the world, we're all laymen, so we have to repeat until it gets into our head because our mindset works that way. So I think it's very important to look into that, and that itself tells you why we don't have true entrepreneurship going forward in terms of an environment. So we got to go back to the drawing board. Come back. Financing is not an issue. I agree. It's not a major factor. Sharing is not a major factor. Mentoring, to mentor, a rebel mentoring is different than somebody who's on the lap. The two are totally different. We have enough of the people sitting on the lap. So we need more of the real rebels who come and do something and bring something up and become successful. We allow them. We do not allow those people to come through.
Your colleague from the Gulf, I think, wants to disagree.
Well, actually, his colleague from the Gulf, who happens to be from North Africa and works predominantly in North Africa. I think I want to disagree with Khalid on one issue, which is the notion that somehow we have to start from scratch. I think over the last 10 years, we've accumulated enough experience to understand, one, that there is a nascent but growing culture of entrepreneurship amongst a lot of young people. Not enough. It's not growing because it needs support, precisely along the lines of what Madame and Mr. Sajil Massi here have mentioned. It requires unlocking finance, it requires making some advances in how education comes to serve this, and it requires work from governments. We're not asking governments for funding. We're not asking governments to come and set up the investments. Just create enough space, regulations, laws, minimize the red tape, maybe improve a little bit on the corruption indicators to allow the entrepreneurs to expand, to grow, to become a truly important and dynamic movement in the economy. I would go one step further here, just in response to your question, and forgive me for being maybe a bit, I'm not skeptical on technology. We like technology hubs. I'm not sure how many we should have in the region, but I think what we clearly need to connect some of the discussions earlier are hubs for entrepreneurs, period. Small entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs. We need technology to make this work for us. But I think it would be a mistake for some of us in the region to use some of the dazzling stories about success in the technology space as the entry point for thinking about what we were discussing.
I'm being wrapped up here. I want to ask one, because I sense one other disagreement, and I just want to get everyone's show of hands here. Is the biggest challenge going from floor 1 to 7, or is it going from floor 7 to 70? And if you think the biggest challenge is 1 to 7, raise your hand.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
And define 1 to 7 to 17.
Is the biggest challenge for an entrepreneur is going from floor 1 to 7, or is the bigger challenge going from 7 to 70? Because I heard a little disagreement there. And if you think it's 1 to 7, that first 7, raise your hand. And if you think it's 7 to 70, raise your hand. So 1 to 7.
7 to what?
I think you can.
Okay.
No, I think there's a third one.
I was never good in
That is
math.
below 7.
Well, this is my next. Okay, so let's have a third option. The third option is building the foundation.
That's what.
Foundation.
Foundation. Look, you can learn from, Tariq is right. So much has been done in the past 20 years or 30 years. We got to use that to take it forward. But I will say this. In the past 20 or 30 years, personally, I've heard across the Arab world, because that's something I know, so much of reform talk, governments don't talk about reform, and then you look, again, do a study. Look at how much of that talk, year by year, or a 5-year plan, they do it. The only place I do see, actually for 30 or 40 years, I've been hearing for every 5 years, the doom of Dubai. Every 5 years, there's a 5-year doom of Dubai. Dubai is gone. Dubai, this is a bubble, it's going to go. And the only place I see actually is not going is Dubai. They came back with a real venom after the 2008, where everybody was laughing at them. They've gone down. And suddenly look at Dubai where it is. Okay, it has its problems, major problems in the future, but at least it's done something. Somebody who had the vision to do something. If you're in government, if you are a decision maker, you got to have vision. What I think lacks in this part of the world, truly, is vision. We don't
I cannot agree, Khalid.
Okay. We lack. We talk across the Arab world and Africa. The vision is missing because we don't see things there. We see things here. Yes, 2011 actually was good. Certain areas they fixed things. This was one place where things happened. They were very smart. They did things ahead of the game. Other places, they always said, oh no, we are not Egypt, we are not Tunis, we are not Syria, and things started happening. And as we see, we're calling it terrorism now. We don't want to call it that. We did not allow people to think outside the box. We did not allow.
I'm going to have to cut. Your colleague wants to disagree.
Yes, I disagree. But you said that we did things differently in Morocco, and the Vice President said something that has been applauded for that, and very warmly, is think different. Being rebel, thinking differently doesn't mean being rebel. Thinking differently within a vision doesn't mean you're disruptive. You're just, journeying in a different way. But see what I mean?
I don't mean a rebel being a terrorist. I mean a rebel in terms of, as an entrepreneur, thinking outside the box, raising, as he said, actually the barrier up and asking questions which people don't like those questions to be asked. That is a problem. The more we basically sit back and say we don't have that problem, by the way, the longer it's going to take us to get out of the problem. That is what I'm getting at. So we need to think that we do have a problem. There is nothing wrong with it to say we have a problem. Yes, we've done things, but we have a problem.
The last word is going to come. You get the last word.
Yes. Morocco has done great reforms. We are not there yet, but we are within a trend. And I think this is what we want to be sharing, that if you address, you analyze your problem, you address them, even if it's not the right scale, if it's not gathering every entrepreneurs in every city, in every sector, in every dimension, well, at least it's a start. And this is what I want to say. We are starting our own journey, and we are not doing that bad. And I think we should modelize with some tech hub. We should add some more ingredients to accelerate our own motion, our own development, social and environmental, and of course economic development. This is why I don't agree with Khalid. We are in a trend, and we are not, disruptive 100% with everything. That's why.
But for your information, we always disagree. But
disagreement is good. You cannot have light without friction. Hopefully, it's these very conversations we're having on stage. We'll continue out in the courtyard. And with that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining me on stage and for really a fun, lively conversation. I'm glad everyone got their views. Thank you very much.